The gift was heavy in my arms, a beautiful ceramic vase I knew my mother would love. I'd saved for months. I pushed open her familiar front door, the sound of her voice floating from the kitchen. "Oh, I know," she was saying, a light, airy laugh I rarely heard directed at me. "It's going to be simply perfect. Just a small, elegant gathering." I smiled, about to call out, when her tone shifted. It became low, almost conspiratorial. "I just can't bring Rachel this year. She's too embarrassing." The words hit me like a physical slap. I stood frozen in her hallway. My own mother. I took a shaky step forward, and the floorboard creaked. She spun around, phone clutched to her chest, her face a mask of pure panic. The humiliation was instant and raw, burning my cheeks. I forced my lips into a tight smile. "Don't worry, Mom," I said, my voice strangely calm. "I wouldn't dream of embarrassing you." I placed the vase on her counter with a dull thud. "For you," I managed to say. The air was thick with her unspoken words. She stammered, "Rachel, honey, it's not what you think." I didn't let her finish. I just remembered I have to be somewhere. I fled her house, the image of her guilty face seared into my mind. Driving home, the dam broke. Hot, angry tears streamed down my face. Too embarrassing. The words echoed, unlocking a vault of memories. Her critiques of my comfy floral dresses. Her sighs when I talked about my simple job as a bookstore manager. The way her lips pursed when I mentioned my divorce from Tom. I was never enough. I walked into my quiet apartment, the silence deafening. I opened my calendar, found the birthday RSVP, and deleted it. I whispered into the empty room, "You'll get your perfect party, Mom, just not the way you think." My phone buzzed incessantly. The family group chat, which I'd muted, was exploding with photos. A screenshot of a gorgeous, upscale restaurant menu. A picture of my brother Mark holding up a bottle of champagne with a thumbs up. My mother's friends discussing their outfits. The planning for her birthday was in full swing, and I was the only one not there. Not just absent from the party, but excluded from the very conversation about it. The digital silence around me was louder than any notification. Then a private message from Mark popped up. "Hey, Rach. Look, I'm sorry about all this. Mom said it's just for close family this year." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. Close family. The words felt like a final, deliberate slap. I was her daughter, but I wasn't considered close family. I collapsed onto my sofa, Mark's text burning in my hand. Close family, it took me back. After Dad died, everything changed. I was 16 and Mom just checked out. She buried her grief in social climbing and appearances. I became the practical one. I learned to cook, to pay bills, to make sure the laundry was done. I held our fractured family together, while she chased a life that looked good in a magazine spread. My practicality, the very thing that kept a roof over our heads, was never elegant enough for her new world. She wanted a daughter who was a delicate accessory, not one who knew how to unclog a sink. I pulled an old photo album from the shelf. There was a picture of me and Dad, him beaming with pride as I held a science fair ribbon. I traced his face with my finger. "You'd never let her treat me like this," I whispered, the ache of his absence fresh all over again. I needed to talk to someone who wouldn't judge. I called Nora, my best friend since college, and a brilliant event planner. I spilled the whole story, my voice cracking. Instead of pity, Nora let out a bitter laugh. She said, "You're too embarrassing? For her stuffy party? Rachel, you're the most genuine person I know. Then don't go. Seriously. Send someone better in your place. Make her choke on her own words." Her words were a spark in my dark mood. Send someone better. The idea was crazy, but it felt right. A plan, wild and audacious, began to form in my mind. It wasn't about revenge, not exactly. It was about making a point she couldn't ignore. After hanging up, I felt a strange sense of calm. I opened my laptop, my fingers flying across the keys. I started typing an email to the Gilded Vine, the restaurant where the party was being held. "Her name is Elena," Nora said over coffee the next day. "She's an actress and an etiquette coach. Poise is her profession. She's perfect." I met Elena in a quiet library corner. She was indeed perfect, calm, graceful, with a warm but professional demeanor. I laid out my proposition. I would hire her to attend my mother's birthday party as my personal assistant. Her mission, to represent me flawlessly. She would be everything my mother thought I wasn't. Elena listened intently, her expression neutral. I understand the assignment, Rachel, but what exactly do you want me to do or say if your mother asks about you? Where should I tell her you are? I took a deep breath, the final piece of the plan clicking into place. Tell her I'm exactly where I should be. I did some digging into the party details, using the login I'd never deleted from when I used to organize these things for her. That's when I discovered the twist. The birthday party wasn't just a party, it was doubling as a fundraiser for the Haven, a local women's shelter, a charity I'd volunteered with for years. I'd introduced my mother to them, and now she was using it to boost her social status. The event planning chat was in chaos. Without my silent coordination, they were floundering with seating charts and donor lists. A slow, cold smirk spread across my face. She had taken the charity I loved and turned it into her trophy, all while excluding me from it. I looked at the chaotic messages. Then let's make sure her big night is unforgettable, I said to my silent screen. Nora's office became our war room. I briefed Elena for hours. I told her stories about my childhood, about Dad, about my mother's specific quirks and snobberies. We rehearsed my mannerisms, the way I tuck my hair behind my ear when I'm nervous, my specific laugh. Elena was a quick study, absorbing it all. She practiced delivering a message with just the right blend of warmth and detached professionalism. Nora watched us, a concerned look on her face. You sure you want her to take your place completely, to be a polished version of you? I nodded, my resolve firm. Yes, I want my mother to look at Elena and realize for one perfect moment exactly what she threw away. The night of the party arrived. From a photo Mark accidentally sent to the group chat, I saw my mother, Margaret, beaming in a silver gown as guests arrived at the Gilded Vine. She looked radiant, the center of her perfect universe. Then, Elena entered the frame. She wore a simple, elegant black dress, looking poised and utterly confident. She carried a single, elegant envelope. She approached my mother, whose smile tightened in confusion. Elena spoke calmly, gesturing to the envelope. I could imagine her words. A gift from Rachel. She regrets she cannot be here. My mother, flustered but maintaining her composure, opened the envelope. Her face went pale. It was a donation check to the Haven. And it was signed, in my clear, familiar handwriting, Rachel Carter. The amount on the check was staggering. It was 10 times what my mother's wealthiest friend had pledged. A wave of whispers moved through the crowd like a ripple. I could almost hear them. Rachel did this? The daughter she didn't invite? I thought Margaret said she was unwell. My mother's smile was so tight it looked painful. She clutched the check, forced to graciously accept this monumental gift. She was trapped. Elena, cool as a cucumber, handed my mother a small, sealed note. She delivered her line perfectly, her voice just loud enough for those nearby to hear. From Rachel. She said to read this when the time feels right. The mystery of the note hung in the air, a silent bomb waiting to go off. During her speech, my mother had no choice. She had to publicly thank me. And of course, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, a tremendous thank you to my daughter, Rachel, for her surprising generosity. She couldn't be with us tonight. She's just so busy helping others. You know how she is. She was spinning a web of lies, trying to reclaim the narrative. She made it sound like my absence was a noble choice, that we were the best of friends. Someone in the audience, probably a friend of a friend, recorded the moment. The clip, with its palpable tension and my mother's strained praise, started making the rounds locally. It was mildly, deliciously viral in our small social circle. I wasn't in the dark. Nora was at the party, a reluctant guest on my behalf, and she was live-streaming key moments to my tablet. I watched it all from my couch, a bowl of popcorn in my lap. I felt a faint smile as my mother struggled. But then the charity director took the mic. She began praising my mother's incredible leadership and personal generosity in securing such a large donation. My mother simply smiled and nodded, accepting credit for my money. She was taking full ownership of my gift. The smile vanished from my face, replaced by cold fury. She wasn't just excluding me. She was erasing me. So that's how it's gonna be, I said, my voice low and steady. I didn't waste a second. I found the direct number for Abigail, the director of the Haven. I had worked closely with her for years. Abigail, it's Rachel Carter, I said, my voice calm but firm. I'm so glad the donation was received. I just wanted to clarify the details for your records. It's a personal donation from me, not from my mother. The funds were transferred from my company account. There was a pause on the other end. Abigail's voice was careful when she replied. Rachel, that's interesting. Thank you for telling me. Because the press release we were given, and all the chatter here tonight, is crediting your mother. The correction was swift and public. The Haven's social media accounts posted a graceful but firm clarification. We are thrilled to announce an incredibly generous personal donation from Rachel Carter to our cause. We thank Rachel for her long-standing support and apologize for any initial confusion. A local online news outlet picked it up. The headline was a work of art. Donation mix-up, true donor revealed as Rachel Carter. It painted my mother not as a generous philanthropist, but as a confused, or worse, dishonest socialite. I imagined her phone, left on a table at the after-party, lighting up non-stop with calls and messages. The perfect facade had a massive public crack in it. My own phone began to buzz. First it was Mark. Rach, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she'd do that. The donation thing is crazy. Then, messages from cousins and my mother's friends flooded in. Your mother told us you were traveling. We missed you there. The family group chat, from which I'd been excluded, suddenly included me again, exploding with questions and subtle jabs at my mother. The tide was turning. Then, a single text from Margaret came through. No apology. Just one venomous line. You've humiliated me. I stared at it, all my hurt and anger crystallizing into a single clear thought. My reply was quick. No, Mom, you did that yourself. 2 days later, she showed up at the bookstore. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her designer clothes slightly rumpled. Rachel, she breathed, her voice trembling. Can we talk? I'm so sorry, I was wrong. For a fleeting second, my heart softened. This was what I wanted, wasn't it? An apology. But then she kept talking. My friends, my circle, they're all talking. The charity board is questioning my integrity. This is a nightmare. The pieces clicked into place. Her tears weren't for me. They were for her shattered reputation. The warmth in my chest froze over. I looked at her, really looked at her. You didn't come for me, I said, my voice cold and flat. You came for your reputation. My words hung in the quiet bookstore. My mother's face crumpled, but this time, it looked real. You don't understand the pressure, she whispered, sinking into a chair. And then the story came out, a story I'd never heard. About her own mother, my grandmother, a fiercely critical woman who had disowned her for marrying my father, a simple teacher. She said I was throwing my life away, Mom confessed, a tear finally falling for him, for us. I spent my whole life trying to build a life she would have approved of. And you were so like your father, so good and genuine. You reminded me of everything I'd lost. The real reason was a heart-wrenching reveal. Her cruelty was a twisted reflection of her own pain. I was torn between a lifetime of hurt and a shocking wave of empathy. Then you should have loved me harder, I said, my voice thick with emotion, not hurt me more. She insisted on brunch the following week. The air was thick with unspoken words. She tried to justify herself again. I just wanted you to fit in, Rachel, to have an easier life than I did. You embarrass me because you remind me of the parts of me I had to lock away to survive. She said it like it was a reasonable explanation. It wasn't. I put my fork down, the clatter sounding unnaturally loud. I leaned forward, my eyes locking with hers. I wasn't the embarrassed little girl anymore. Then maybe it's time you met the version of me you were so afraid of. I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. For the first time, she was looking at the strong woman I'd become, not the disappointing girl she thought I was. Weeks later, an invitation arrived. The Haven was hosting its annual gala, and I was to be the guest of honor, in recognition of my donation. The irony was perfect. It was the same crowd from my mother's birthday. This time, I went. I wore a deep blue dress that made me feel powerful. I walked in on my own terms, my head high. I gave another, smaller donation, but this time, I did it publicly, speaking gracefully about the charity's work. I was everything she'd ever claimed I wasn't. Poised, generous, and admired. As I was handed a small award, I caught a movement at the back of the room. My mother stood there, having just arrived, her eyes wide with shock as she took in the scene. All eyes were on me as I took the microphone. I didn't look at her, but I felt her stare. Thank you, I began, my voice clear and steady. The Haven is a cause close to my heart. I've learned that strength isn't about the image you project, but the help you give quietly. Some people in your life teach you about love. Others teach you about strength, often through hardship. I'm grateful for both lessons. The room erupted in warm, genuine applause. People were looking at me with respect and admiration. I finally glanced at my mother. She was watching the crowd cheer for me, not for her. The realization dawned on her face. She had lost her starring role in her own story. She turned and hurried away, a hand covering her face. I saw the glint of tears before she disappeared. A few days later, a handwritten letter arrived on heavy, expensive stationery. It was from my mother. It was a messy mix of apology and excuse. She was sorry for hurting me, but she also detailed her own struggles, her grief, her pressures. It was a classic non-apology. Then my eyes caught one line, and I read it twice, my breath catching. I don't know how to love you unless I'm proud of you. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. It wasn't an excuse, it was a confession of her own profound failure. She saw love as a reward for performance, not a constant, unconditional gift. I didn't reply to the letter. Words felt useless. Instead, I wrote another check to the Haven, but this time, I did it differently. I made the donation in my mother's name, Margaret Carter, and marked it as anonymous. I didn't do it for forgiveness or reconciliation. I did it to show her what grace looked like, a gesture with no expectation of reward or recognition. A few days later, the Haven posted a thank you on their social media, highlighting the anonymous gift from Margaret Carter, calling it a beautiful gesture of reconciliation and support. They had put two and two together. The story had come full circle, but the ending was still unwritten. My phone rang, it was her. Her voice was thick with emotion, but it was a raw, real sound I rarely heard. The charity, they called me. They thanked me for another donation. It was you, wasn't it? She whispered. After everything I did, you did that for me? I looked out my window at the quiet street. No, Mom, I said softly. I didn't do it for you. I did it for the woman I wanted you to be. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. I heard a soft, shaky intake of breath. Then her voice, small and broken, said, maybe I can still try. A year passed. The sting had lessened. She invited me to a small, quiet dinner at her house. Just her, me, and Mark. There were no fancy centerpieces, no guest list. She cooked, something she hadn't done in years. When Mark arrived, she put her arm around me, a simple, genuine gesture. Mark, she said, and her voice was full of a new, quiet pride. You remember my daughter Rachel, the most generous woman I know. It wasn't a performance. The words were simple and true. I saw the glimmer of tears in her eyes, and for the first time I knew they were for me, not for herself. But a lifetime of hurt couldn't be healed in one night. I smiled, I accepted the compliment, but I didn't let my guard down fully. The bridge was being rebuilt, but it was still fragile. The following Sunday, I visited my dad's grave. I brought a small framed photo from that recent dinner. My mother and I, standing together, both smiling small, real smiles. I placed it against his headstone. I didn't get the mom I wanted, Dad, I said aloud, the wind carrying my words, the one you knew. But I became the daughter I needed to be. Strong, kind on my own terms, and finally free. I stood there for a long moment, feeling a peace I hadn't known in years. The anger was gone, replaced by a quiet understanding and a firm knowledge of my own worth. I turned and walked away, not looking back, ready for whatever came next.